He's having a good summit so far. I know that I am. We do want to go ahead and get started. We've got some great discussions to cover during this session. While there's always talk about creating new housing units, whether market rate or assisted affordability, preserving existing housing is an important supplement to all new developments. Preserving and improving existing housing prevents displacement, it discourages gentrification, and is normally cheaper than building new housing, and is already conforming with existing land use patterns and zoning regulations. The Hill News out of DC recently reported that approximately 40% of America's current building stock is at least 50 years old, including many housing units in need of upgrades, repairs, and energy efficiency retrofits, as well as buildings that were originally built for something else. Rehabbing these older and historic buildings for housing is often cheaper than building the new ones. It's also better for the environment because rehabs use fewer materials and less energy than new construction. And often, the revitalization of a community asset has ripple effects on local economies and quality of life. Given these benefits, we must make the most of the opportunity these buildings provide to ensure our communities get the housing that they so desperately need. But like developing programs for new affordable housing, preservation of existing housing comes with a cost. Whether it's financial assistance toward housing repairs and rehab, or investment into the community infrastructure, or even policy changes to allow accessory dwelling units, preservation of housing usually is more financially attainable than building new. Preservation of ownership housing helps to create and sustain wealth for lower income and middle income generational families through asset management. Preservation is closely tied to maintenance programs that help new owners maintain their homes and their values over time. Clearly, hopefully, housing preservation is one of the rungs of the housing continuum leading from assisted affordability to market rate ownership. We have with us today three people who've been working in this arena and are very well versed in preservation of housing in urban, rural, as well as statewide environments. I'm very, very happy to introduce James Robertson, the founder and president of the 516 Project, located in Caroline County in our planning district, but serving Planning District 16 and borders beyond. We also have Bailey Thompson, a community development planner with the City of Fredericksburg, City of Fredericksburg's Community Planning and Building. Bailey oversees and administers the city's Community Development Block Grant, CDBG program, and well as working on housing improvements for families of low to moderate income. Sandra Powell is with us from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. She's the Senior Deputy Director of Community Development and Housing. DHCD offers many resources to assist with housing needs, from housing rehab to homebuyer resources, as well as energy efficiency and rental assistance. I ask you to listen closely, take plenty of notes, and welcome our guest speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. I think it's still morning, yeah. Appreciate y'all having me here today. So I wanted to speak a little bit into kind of what we're doing through 516 Project, and our main focus is working with individuals and helping them stay in their existing homes. And so as to what we were speaking of as far as preserving the housing market, what we're trying to do is to really allow individuals to stay in their homes, to have a safe home, to have safe access to their home, and then to keep that house as an opportunity for them to stay in the community, stay involved, and also build their family resources. By allowing the folks that are living in these homes to stay put, kind of age in place in most cases. A lot of the clientele that we deal with are elderly. It allows them to have a place that keeps them involved in the community, keeps them safe. So one of the things that we're focusing on is handicap access. And in doing that, we're putting wheelchair ramps on homes, modifying bathrooms to make them handicap accessible. So a lot of times, taking out tubs, adding in roll-in shower pans, ADA toilets, facilities, stuff like that. Also widening doorways in the homes. And then working with the families to identify things throughout the home that can increase their safety ongoing. Even things as simple as, making note of, hey, we've got area rugs over here that are going to become a trip hazard as you're, aging and moving into using a walker or, a cane or something like that. Looking into things that are going to be some of the high cost items as that home ages. So looking at the roof, making sure that the roof is well taken care of, making sure that the HVAC system is taken care of. All these things can kind of come together, and they're going to provide the family with a way to maintain their home, keep it safe for them, and hopefully allow them to use that home to continue generationally making a difference in their family. The longer that these folks can stay in their home, it's going to increase the generations of that family. We work with a lot of families that have 2 and 3 generations living under the same roof. And so by maintaining these homes properly, it allows that second and third generation that are there to keep that home longer. Therefore, staying in the community, like we were talking about in the main assembly there, keeping children in their same school system, around their same friends and network and things like that, and giving them an environment that's going to be safe for the children as well as the older adults in that facility or in that home. Another thing that we're really looking at is education to the families. We want to work with folks and make sure they understand the importance of their home. Unfortunately, a lot of folks that end up in a situation where their home has repair needs, they get to a point where they've really lost hope. They feel like they've been forgotten. We see this especially in the elderly community, and especially in elderly and disabled community. And so we want to make sure that not only are we working on the home and making those physical repairs, but we're also working with the person and the family to help them understand, one, they're not forgotten about. We love them, we want to be there to serve them and help them. And also that there are other resources within the community that they can reach out to and still be very involved with their community, be plugged in. So that's one of the reasons I think for us as a nonprofit, it's so important. I think here in the Fredericksburg region, we've done a really great job. We have a lot of different nonprofits that serve different areas and serve different needs throughout the community. And so we've done a really good job, I think, of building a bigger community around that and being able to say, hey, I'm here working on this piece of your home, but I noticed that you have this need. Maybe it's you need a ride to a doctor's appointment, or you need help getting groceries or something like that. And so we're able to then reach out to those other organizations and be able to say, hey, here's the card of somebody that can help you get a ride to your doctor's appointments. Here's the cards of somebody that can help you get to a grocery store and things like that. So we really want to take a holistic and whole family approach to it, to where not only physical needs are being met and we're preserving that housing and making that house safe and livable for long term, but also working individually with those people on that personal level to be able to build that community, get them plugged back into the community if they've had to step away. We recently worked with a family. The family was out of the area and the father still lived here. He hadn't left his house on his own power in over 2 years, other than by calling an ambulance to go to the hospital. Just because he didn't have a wheelchair ramp. Everything else in the house he was able to get to. He had a good shower in the house. He had everything else he needed. But he physically could not leave the house on his own power because there was 5 steps to get out the front door. And so the smile on his face as he went down that ramp, leaving that house for the first time on his own was just huge. But there again, it rebuilt that hope in his life, because now he could do something simple like going out and chatting with his neighbors. He lived on a cul-de-sac, and so he's able to go out and talk to the neighbors, go down to the mailbox and get his mail, things like that. And so that's one of the things we really want to work through, is making sure that people have that hope, people understand that their home is a key to them for not only their generation, but the generations that follow them, and that we can help, just really increase the community at large around saying, hey, we can help you provide safe housing with what you've already got existing. You don't have to necessarily go to a nursing home or assisted living or build something else. We can take and make modifications to what you already have to make that a long-term solution for you. That was the main thing I wanted to cover, but I know we're going to have some discussion, but I hope that will give you at least some initial information on what we're doing as a nonprofit and how we're trying to work with some of the other nonprofits in the area of how we can really preserve housing and make it affordable for folks to stay in their homes and be safe.
Thank you, James. And if you will, just jot down any questions, and we'll have plenty of time at the end. Some of these hopefully will begin to overlap, and you'll see the comprehensive nature of the entire housing preservation discussion. So with that, we will ask Bailey to come up, I believe, is next up. Do you have a slide on here? Not sure if, did they show? Oh, okay. Let's see.
That's it.
There we go.
All right. All right, good morning, everyone. First off, I would just like to, gather us all a big round of applause for 516 Project. You guys are an amazing organization. So I was going to come up here, talk all about preserving housing, keeping family members in their house. You did amazing at that. I'm not just gonna re-say the same things. So the city of Fredericksburg has a CDBG program, the Community Development Block Grant. It's dollars that come from HUD every year annually, and we spend them throughout the city. So let's see. The Community Development Block Grant, originally authorized in 1974. It's one of the longest continuously run programs at HUD. Basically gives out to about 1,200 units of general local government. Going back through the city's records, I found it that we first became an entitlement community in 1994. Now, because we're connected to HUD and the federal government, we got a lot of paperwork, a lot of plans. So kind of going down the list of how they work. Citizen participation plan, we have one that looks at how we interact with the public, how we advertise our plans, how we meet with people, and where we should spend these funds. The consolidated plan, which kind of focuses on a 3-year time frame. It shows what are we going to do over those 5 years. Currently, we just finished up year 3, moving into year 4. So pretty soon, we'll be looking at the next 5 years. Annual action plan is how we're going to spend the dollars that year. That's where it gets into the real nitty-gritty. We're following the consolidated plan, but also where kind of really breaks down the funds, really breaks down where in the city we're going to spend these. And then the Consolidated Annual Performance Review, or the CAPER. This looks at how we did over that annual year. So the annual and the consolidated, they both follow the annual and the CAPER. They both follow the consolidated plan, and these are all bouncing right back to the citizen participation plan, how we bring people in. So because the CDBG program, we have some national objectives. And to qualify, you have to hit one of the big ones, either low to moderate income, either slumber blight, or urgent need. Now, I kind of threw up all the CDBG ones on here. The ones bold and underlines are what the city really focuses on, area benefit and housing. So in the city, we have a variety of activities. Kind of the big ones that the city staff manages is the housing programs. This is emergency home repair, removal of architectural barriers, and direct home ownership assistance. We then have a public facilities program, and then we have some subrecipients that our grant helps with activities. This is Lois Ann's Hope House, Legal Aid Works, and FAHAS. So the first city housing program is emergency home repair. We see that in the cities, some of these houses, yeah, they're low to moderate income. They can't afford the projects to repair their entire roof, fix all the plumbing damages that are going on in their house. So we come in, we look at roofing, plumbing, and electrical repairs, and then kind of any damages that have a direct link to that. So if your roof leaks and now all your drywall is in really bad condition, we're not just going to fix your roof and leave you with bad drywall. We're going to do that as well. So kind of the question I get a lot from applicants is like, what is the cost? So going back, emergency home repair and direct homeownership assistance, which I'll get to later, they focus on a 5-year forgivable loan. So we don't ask for any money up front. We don't ask for any money down the road after the bills come in and we pay the contractors. We just ask that they sign a deed of trust. So every year on the anniversary date, 20% of that cost is knocked off. After 5 years, they're still living in their home, but then we sign a certificate of satisfaction and there is no cost to them. It's 100% forgiven. So this is just a couple examples. We did a brand new roof on that house, and looking in the middle, their sinks were clogging up. They didn't have drainage. Well, we took down a little bit of their ceilings, and their main pipes are leaking. There's just real nasty sludge coming out of these pipes. So fully gutted those pipes, redid them. Now they have a new roof. All the plumbing in their sinks, showers, toilets, they all work perfectly. This is a roof that we did. So that on the left, yeah, that's the inside of the house viewed from the outside of the house. Big problem there. So we completely redid their roof, so now they don't have to worry about the water damage coming through. And once again, we are actually midway through this project right now, but they had a bucket because the mystery water was just coming from the ceiling, and they did not have the funds to go exploring that and to fix that. So moving into our second program, removal of architectural barriers. This is for kind of anyone with disabilities, so either roll-in showers, wheelchair ramps. We've even gone in and done like visual fire alarms for people that are deaf. Here's a ramp we did out on Farrell Lane. Brand new bathroom. So the one that I guess doesn't tie completely into preserving housing stock, but pretty close. Direct home ownership assistance. So what we're looking at is anyone in moderate income or low income that wants to buy a house in the city. We can help you with specific closing costs, down payment assistance, or even refinancing an adjustable high-rate mortgage. We haven't done that one recently, but we're very open to it. Our subrecipients, so through the CDBG grant, we can contact some outside agencies. They create a program, and we help them leverage money to run that program. Lois Ann's Hope House does the Fredericksburg Rent and Mortgage Assistance Program. Really good at keeping people in their homes and avoiding eviction. Legal Aid Works goes out housing advocacy assistance. They are in the courtrooms with low-income people in their eviction hearings. And then Fredericksburg Area Health and Support Services, financial, rental, and utility assistance, HIV outreach and education. So some other ones we do, public facilities. So a little bit outside of housing, but still wrapped into CDBG. We do infrastructure improvements, streets, sewers, sidewalks, water and sewer lines. So if you drove in from Fall Hill to the conference center today, you passed where Fall Hill meets Ruffin Road. And if you went out there 6 months ago, this is what you would have saw. Some grass, maybe a trail, maybe like a footpath going up the side. So we used our CDBG dollars to come up with a public facilities improvement program. Here it is midway, and that is what you saw today. Brand new sidewalks, pedestrian scaled lighting, just a real amenity kind of going into that neighborhood. So, part of the plan, the CAPER, we looked at what we did last year. Emergency home repair, 5 properties, $133,000. We helped that lane on Farrell Lane. That was our removal of architectural barriers. We helped someone buy a property. That was not supposed to be 400. That's a lot of sidewalk. That first 4 is supposed to be a dollar sign. And get going along with the plans. This is what we're predicting for this year. We're going to help 4 properties with emergency home repair, 2 properties with remove architectural barriers. We're going to help 2 people buy some homes. This year, we're engineering a new project for pedestrian improvements. And then, of course, still moving along with our subrecipients. Yeah. Yep. So that's the end of my slideshow. If we need to bring it back up during discussion, no objections.
Thank you, Bailey. And we will have slides available we'll be able to send out. And I'm not sure about each of the breakouts, but we'll definitely have the video of the main speakers as well. So, Sandra, I will turn it. We've heard regional, we've heard specific to the city, now all of the statewide initiatives.
Good morning. Again, my name is Sandra Powell, and I'm with the Department of Housing and Community Development. I've only been there about 2 years now, so I just want to first thank my fellow panelists, to talk about some of the programs that they are already doing in the community. And you also heard a little bit about outcomes with some of the federal dollars. So the state itself also offers a lot of resources for preservation and development of affordable housing. We offer it from first-time home buyers all the way up to multifamily developers. What I'll do today is just kind of talk through some of the programs that we offer. In hearing some of the presentation, I realized I left quite a few of them off, so I'll touch on some of those as well. And then hopefully I will talk then to some of the programs to where I can kind of give you some of the specific information of, how we do what we do. As you know, the state does not really develop anything. We are what I like to call the Oprah of agencies. We always say you get a grant and you get a grant and you get a loan versus us trying to actually develop. Prior to coming to the state, I did do a lot of development. I came from a public housing community to where I did the development of and preservation of affordable housing, public housing, neighborhoods, community centers, and things like that. So a lot goes into it, and you'll have a lot of resources up here today to kind of talk through what you are looking for in your community. So first, I'll just really talk about the first-time home buyers programs. I'll talk about one of the major ones, what we call Acquire, Renovate, Sell. And then I'll talk about one of the larger programs, which is called the Affordable and Special Needs Housing that we administer. So with the first-time home buyers programs with the state, we offer both down payment assistance and then what we call a VITA account, which is for first-time home buyers. And again, the down payment assistance, the family can look for a home that's already preserved or a new construction home in order to purchase. We've set aside funding of $1.5 million this past year. We've done that probably for the last 5 or 6 years of $1.5 million. As you can imagine, that fund now, it used to be oversubscribed. It is now not that way anymore because of housing costs, because of just inflation, interest rates, and it's just a little more difficult. So we're trying to be a little more creative there. One thing I heard in the opening remarks from Mr. Koziel, I think someone stood up and talked about the regulatory burdens. So we're looking at a lot of hours. Of course, federal dollars have regulatory burdens. And what I like to say is that we, the state, want to be the experts at the regulatory burden, and you be the experts at putting the units up. And together we'll pair and we'll actually preserve our communities. The other one is just, again, the first-time home buyers, or the VITA program, where we work with intermediaries who, if a family has home ownership as their goal, or maybe it's business as their goal, they will be able to join this program, and it's a match. I think it's now 8-to-1. It used to be 4-to-1, in order to get to their goal of home ownership and or business economic development. The next program I'll talk to you about is called the Acquire, Renovate, Sale program, and that's the one that I think goes best for this topic. It talks about the preservation. So the Acquire is that we work with nonprofits, units of local government, in order to acquire properties that are in their community. Usually it's at a lower value. We allow them to, sometimes we'll grant them money in order to preserve that property for a first-time home buyer, and then they will sell the property to that first-time home buyer. A lot of this funding itself, we've talked about Virginia Housing. Virginia Housing funds a lot of these initiatives. So even though the state gets federal dollars, state dollars, Virginia Housing also is a very big partner in this program. And then the next one I'll talk about is really the larger program that we had. Again, you've heard Mr. Koziel talk about the Virginia Housing Trust Fund. That was the largest fund that we've had in the last biennium year. We had $150 million, which was $75 million to go to affordable housing and homeless services. So just talking about the affordable housing program itself, this past year we had $60 million that we put into this fund. We also match it with our federal dollars, our home dollars that comes from HUD, as well as our National Housing Trust Fund dollars that come from HUD. One program that we did not put in here, I didn't mention it on the slide, but I do want to mention it. We also had $80 million in energy efficiency. It was called Housing and Energy Efficiency Program. It was $80 million. All combined, it was $174 million that we had this year. It was the largest program that we had in order to develop and preserve affordable housing. And so that's really what I wanted to talk about, was the programs themselves. But the preservation itself, and I think that for me, I was telling someone earlier before this panel started, preservation is very important, because what it does is it helps to keep those units, what I call, on this side of the dirt. So once those units are down, they're in the landfill, they're no more. They're similar to public housing. They were built in the 40s and 50s, but once we take those units down, we can't place housing. We can't place families in those housing. And so when we started looking at this AS&H and trying to retool it, we started to look like, how can we, the state, make the money a little bit easier to obtain. Of course, it is a competitive process. This particular program, the AS&H program, is for multifamily developers. However, we do want to make sure, and believe it or not, $170 million is oversubscribed. Never thought I would put only in front of $170 million, but here I am this year in 2023 putting only in front of $170 million, because it is oversubscribed. But those funds also go to preserve those units that we would lose out of the inventory, and a lot of units are not coming back. So, if you think about your public housing communities, they're not coming back one for one. Usually, they're not coming back one for one. So once those units are taken down, you may have a 70 or 80% number of units that are being preserved. So I will stop there, because I know that I can go on a long time about this. I've been in this space for probably 25 years. I absolutely enjoy it. I think that this is something that's very important. Preservation is very important as well. New construction, everyone loves what's shiny and new, but we can't overlook those things that we have that are already standing. So again, we're looking at retooling some of our programs. We're looking at the terms that we have to make the units more affordable, because our money is really the most patient money that goes into most of the developments. So I'll stop there for now.
Oh, thank you all. I know I've got several questions already, but if we could, we'll just turn it to the floor. Any of you that may have some questions, if you could, as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to record these, so it'd be very helpful if you can come to the microphone. If not, just speak loud from your table.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. And I have a general question that will touch each of you and some specifics of each. And so, in general, how do you access your services? So, James, does an individual come to you? Is it an organization? And also, Bailey and Sandra, there's a couple of specific things that I'm interested in with you. Bailey, you mentioned the roads and access, and also some site planning and engineering. And so how do you access that? And Sandra, is there a time frame for the funding for, say, the ARS program? Because I think I called about it and there was no funding. And so if you can talk about, you know, how it's funded and when's the best time to try to optimize. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So for accessing our services, the way we currently handle that is through, it's kind of twofold. We do have an individual application process, so somebody that needs help can reach out to us directly. But a majority of the applicants come to us through a referral process. So like I was mentioning, in working with some of these other organizations throughout the community, we do get a lot of referrals through that. So those are coming from churches, other nonprofits, social services, you know, all sorts of different ways. But that's a majority of where folks come to us from, is through those referral bases.
I think also to touch on that is I get a lot of, kind of depends on what activity we're talking about, but emergency home repair and removal of architectural barriers, most of the time people are calling my office. And because we're the city's program, we only assist residents living in 22401. So I've gotten calls from Caroline County saying that they can't get out of their home, they need a wheelchair ramp. So I tell them to go on Google, type in 516, and go along that route. So, but direct home ownership is one that we've reached out to multiple bank lenders, mortgage companies. We've reached out to people doing first-time home ownership classes, really just trying to spread the word on that program. So public facilities, the engineering you asked about. So semi-modern, we've done one program in the last kind of 5-6 years under that. So how do we get an engineer? Basically, back in the day, due to our scope and the bid requirements weren't super intense, so we created our scope, our invitation for bid, and I went on to I want to say it was like the Department of Labor's website. I Googled all the women-owned and minority-owned, small business-owned engineering firms in like the surrounding couple counties, and I just sent the invitation to bid right to them. Got a bunch of good responses. Ended up going with a firm, but that's kind of how we do outreach. A lot of people, a lot of word of mouth, and just events like this, getting information out to people.
Thank you. And I believe my question was related to the timing of the funding. A lot of our funding, we run funding rounds. So with our affordable and special needs housing, we just closed a round on October 6th. The ARS program is actually, it is continuous, it's open, but the very best time to inquire about those is before the beginning of the fiscal year, which is July 1. So you want to really start probably maybe April, May timeframe. The fiscal year starts July 1.
Okay. Other questions? Thanks, Matt.
Thank you all for speaking. Really zeroing in on one of the bigger issues, at least for us in the city, with preserving is because of our proximity in the National Capital Region, obviously we've become an investment location for housing. So we're facing the situation where people will buy the smaller homes, demolish the smaller homes to rebuild bigger homes, and that's the biggest aspect we're facing. You look at Charles Street right now, what it was 15 or 20 years ago to what it is now, and then you get the argument, well, we got nicer houses, the city's getting more revenue because they're bigger houses, and of course the big mantra in government is highest and best use, which is not necessarily, which is in conflict sometimes with what our housing goals. So how do you see the programs dealing with that issue, with that the market is driving a situation which is basically causing a decline in what we'll call affordable housing? In all the conversation I've heard recently in the last few months on housing, nobody's talking about housing authorities anymore and whether or not they really have a role any longer in the issue of preserving housing. And we have the block grant program, and we have an ability to expand our program if we go into a competitive mode. Is that going to be worth it, and is that something that really needs to be, another final question, the coordination between government, the private sectors, and the nonprofits in dealing with this issue, and how much of that coordination is actually there now? And I think I got all of them in there.
I will start with two of your questions with the market demand and housing authority's role. I come from a housing authority, and I was very fortunate to work very well with the city. And I believe, especially with your housing authorities being a redevelopment housing authority in Virginia, they have that special ability to help you purchase some of those homes, but you have to be very bold, right? So as your developers are coming in, I mean, everybody's watched HGTV and flip homes and things like that, so now everyone with a little bit of cash can come in and do that and really turn a profit. I would always say, this is just Sandra speaking, not DHCD speaking. So from my experience, the boldness would have to come is that you may have to purchase those homes in order to preserve it. You may have to be the first to get to that home buyer or to that investor. And you may have to also use your codes department in order to be your eyes and ears on the ground in order to know what communities are, you know, showing some signs of deferred maintenance, showing some signs of absenteeism from your landlords and things like that, to enforce those. Because not that you want to put them out, but you also want to always have a very, very, very good community for your residents to live in. Again, I told you I could talk about this all day long, but those are, for me, those are some of the things that I would see. And there also has to be a collaboration with your outside investors. So as you have infill lots that need to be developed, I think that some of your developers can do that because local government, state government, federal government cannot do it all. You will need those private investors or nonprofits to help you create the community that you have, you know, that you envision.
So going first to the question about people buying their investment homes in Fredericksburg, I'm going to make a generalization here. Most of the people that we help with low to moderate income are not buying second and third homes. But we do have a condition put into our 3 housing programs that really kind of help avoid that. So we only do housing that is owner occupied. So you can't have, it can't be your second home down in Virginia, you want a handicap ramp. It needs to be the house that you actually live in. To touch on the competitive CDBG funds, there is a CDBG funds, there is an entitlement. We've been an entitlement community since 1994. And then there's also the competitive side. When you branch into competitive, you lose your entitlement status. So going through my program, about $200,000 comes to the city every year. There would be opportunity for more funds in the competitive realm, but there's also the opportunity that HUD decides to go to somebody else. I think it is something the city could explore in the future. I'd like to see that maybe the needs decrease of what we're actively doing. We're doing pretty good on emergency home repair. There's less homes needing that. Then we can branch out to something more, kind of risking it in that bigger risk, bigger reward competitive fund pool.
I think of your questions, Matt, I'll touch on the relationship between nonprofits and government. And that's something that and I'm just speaking for us, not all the nonprofits, because I know everybody has different relationships. I think that's something that we've tried to do and tried to make a priority is working with the local governments in each of the counties. Unfortunately, I think the biggest drawback in our experience has been that obviously there's major differences between each county and what they require, what they're looking for, different things like that. And so especially for a nonprofit and a small nonprofit dealing with, for instance, the code departments, building permits, things like that, it can be very overwhelming. Thankfully, myself and several people that volunteer with us, so just for clarification, we have a staff, we have 2 of us that are full-time staff and we have 2 part-time staff. So it's myself as full-time, Ryan as our project manager, who he's mostly in the field, swinging hammers every day, doing the actual work. And then we have a part-time lady that does the bookkeeping and, kind of office management side. And then another lady that helps out with some of our grant writing. And so, for having a very small staff and, not having the time to be back and forth to permit offices and talking with codes and meeting with the board of director or board of supervisors and things like that, it can get very overwhelming very quickly. So I know personally, I would love to see some times where we can kind of get, even if it's regionally, so say Planning District 16, if we can get those counties together and say, hey, here's how we're going to approach some of these things, in particular if we're dealing with, handicap modifications to a home or things that are going to keep these homes in the marketplace and prevent this family from having to send grandpa into a nursing home and this house getting demolished and turned into a 3-story condominium or whatever it is. I know that's going to be that's probably a pipe dream, but I'd love to see it. Is that coordination between the counties, but the other and the city. The other thing that I would say on that is to make sure that there's all these programs available, and I know I would also love to see a better flow. I know we've talked about the regulations and things like that, but with the money from the state, the money from the city, the different counties, there's all kinds of different programs out there that have funding. But there again, it's just making sure that funding is available and known to the organizations that can help with it. So for instance, and I'll use the city as an example. They're going out and paying John Smith contractor to do some of this work, where we could partner with them, and we have on a couple things in the past, but we could partner with them and do that same work for probably half the cost of hiring that general contractor. And then that benefits us by allowing us to supplement our budget to go out and help more people that further can't afford it, but maybe don't apply or don't qualify under some of the stipulations that come from that grant money and things like that. So I think there's a lot of things there that we can work to really strengthen that relationship between the nonprofits and the government relationships.
Okay. All righty. Matt, real quickly too, while you're walking up, on the preservation of where you do have market rate, how can you preserve market rate before it becomes even more unattainable? Collaboration and partnership, that's what I keep hearing. I'm familiar with one nearby community where a local developer who was a landlord of a number of single-family homes was looking to do a multi-family type development. And while it wasn't officially a quid pro quo, they were able to build a lot of goodwill with the community by offering a number of single-family rental housing to sale to a nonprofit who then used CDBG money to help make the repairs. Some of those were turned over into ownership units, some remained rental, but they all maintained that affordability period for, I want to say, 40 years, which was negotiated between the original landlord and the nonprofit who was kind of acting on behalf of the city. So there are some ways out there, but it all gets back to the collaboration and partnership. Yes, sir.
Thanks again for speaking. So Brian Koziol, he talked about a lot of stats, showed some trend lines, things like that. As I kind of listen to you, a lot of it seems transactional. And I say transactional like within 12 to 18 months, which is a little bit disconcerting because we have statistics, we have trend lines that say, here's what's going on. So I guess I'm trying to understand, how do we bring together local, state, and federal in more of a strategic focus, because you know the inventories, you know kind of what's going on in whether it be the city, whether it be the rural area, whatever you're doing for, these activities. But it just seems to me that, it's still in a stovepipe or in a narrow lane, and the only thing that brings you together is really this funding, which, quite frankly, as you just stated, sir, it could be better utilized. But I'm thinking, how come we're not looking further out when we look at these inventories and we're trying to determine, because where you're all doing budgets. So you got to know, hey, guess what? This year we want to get to this. But in 2 years, we need to be focused on that before the developer comes along who's already been thinking about that property, okay? So how do we get out in front of some of this? And where does that pressure point or those touch points need to happen?
I will have just a brief response. The state operates, well, with our funding sources, we operate on a 5-year plan. So even though a lot of ours are 2 years, 1 year out, we operate really on a 5-year plan as far as our affordable housing is concerned. So a lot of them we may not know until the developers come to us, because we don't really build anything. We only look to the future to see what types of programs that we can fund. A lot of our community development programs, believe it or not, can go out 8 years because it unfortunately takes that long. But by the time that we have a plan, so even if we develop a plan today, that plan is outdated today because the market is just changing so fast that we, the state, it's kind of like turning a ship around in midstream. We're a little bit heavier to turn around. So I will leave it to my colleagues to maybe have a better answer for that.
Well, in the city CDBG world, we have the consolidated plan that's looking out 5 years. 5 years, we're going to estimate what we get for those 5 years of grants. We're going to estimate how we're going to spend the money and estimate how many homes we're going to help or assist. Even go into the annual plan. We're looking at X amount of dollars for 5 dwellings. I have no idea where in the city those 5 dwellings are going to be yet. That's just going to depend on applications, but I think it's just following our consolidated plan, the 5-year, and then really getting a strong next 5-year plan.
Yeah, I think on our end, I don't have a great answer for you for that. With being a smaller nonprofit, we are definitely, looking a little more, close range. We do have some plans, further out, but most of our plans just involve the number of families that we're able to serve. So I would definitely, personally, from our end, I'm glad that we're building the relationships, with the state, with the counties, with the city, so that we can be part of that. But I definitely don't, at this point, we're not at the point where we're going to be setting policy and such things as far as the timeline's concerned.
I'll also add really quick that earlier in the governor's term, he challenged each agency to go out and do what we called a listening session. And so what came out of that listening session really was the Make Virginia Home Plan. I don't think that we've had a lot of discussion around that, but the listening session, just that session alone, we realized that there were a lot of things that the state, the federal government, the state, and then localities will need to do in order to really address some of our housing programs. But I would challenge you to go on our website. I believe it's posted there from the listening session as well.
Thank you. We've got one more quick one if we can.
I'll make it quick. So thank you for coming. So we're a small nonprofit. We plant trees in the city. And I know there's a lot of other folks in this room that are small nonprofits that are here and thinking in their heads, hey, I could add to this program. And getting that together, and I'm looking at Chip more than anything, is really the thing that I think that I look at Bailey when he showed his photos. Great sidewalks, great, but there were no trees there. I could have brought you trees with a grant. And there's other people in this room that can do this kind of thing. So I'm just urging you to keep those connections going and make sure that you know your audience is here to be a part of this in any way that we can.
Thank you, and that's certainly our goal, I think, is that, I think one of the earlier gentlemen called it lanes. We're looking at it to break down silos, not just on the development front where we can bring partners together. Somebody may have trees to offer, somebody may have construction services, but also breaking down those silos between the local governments as well. You know, what Bailey has talked about, those funds are only eligible in the city, and the CDBG is then competitive statewide if it's from the county level. I do think it's our role to begin to try to be that one-stop shop to bring everybody together, and that's what we're working towards. So thanks for that, and we will try to continue. We have one more here I believe we have time for.
So one of the things that actually affects my family directly is we have a great preservation project, and they went and got state money. They only intend on keeping that affordable until their requirements for keeping it affordable have run out. So again, we always talk about this, what's become a buzzword, affordable housing, because it goes into stock, it only stays in stock for a brief period of time, and then it's removed and it becomes a very profitable sale for a developer. How do we work to get better developers? I'm a former developer, like I'm you know, one of the enemies once upon a time, or not, or partners. How do we work as a city and as a county and as a region to get better developers in here who actually are committed to affordable housing? Because there's a lot of developers, there's not a lot that are committed to affordable housing.
I'll save my answer for last.
That's very tough, right? And so I think that just from my past experience, we had to do a lot of work on the front end. We had to do a lot of work in order to get housing authorities or nonprofits to be in that deal to where at the end of that 30 years, they had the right of first refusal. Again, that's just kind of a very easy, simple answer to a very complex problem that many of us are facing every single day.
Very well. It's a very, very complex issue. My experience with it, which is probably 30 years now, you have affordable housing developers, but they still have to break even. They still have to turn a profit, or they won't be a very good affordable housing developer for very long. And there is no way to break even without public assistance. It's just not. So that, that's one of the first things I think for people to understand and the community to understand is that there are not developers who can just go out and lose money by building only affordable units. So it's building those partnerships. The other thing I would say is the investment from the local governments too, because while any of the federal or state programs may have a minimum affordability period of 20 years or 40 years or whatever it may be, local governments can incentivize with their own general fund dollars, and they can then, try to make it so attractive that they then add onto that affordability period. If it's local dollars, there's nothing that says what that affordability period is maxed at. Now, there's going to be a balance and a trade-off in a negotiation, but local dollars have a lot more flexibility than the state or federal programs would. And that has been used by municipalities and counties for their local contributions. If you could give a great round of applause, I think this was a great conversation. And I think we are at break time.